All right, check. Somebody want to let me know that I'm good to go? Because I just switched internets. Interwebs. Uh-oh. Let's see. Check. Somebody want to let me know I'm back? Anybody? There we go. Thank you. I had to switch internets. I saw I was on the wrong one. Okie dokie. Let me get rolling here. Let's start a recording. Okay, away we go, everybody. It is Wednesday, October 2nd of 2024, and this is the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan. My favorite thing to do during the week, even though it's a little bit late after a long day. Roberto was out there making that money, kid, right? Got to make it. So we find ourselves tonight. I'm going to try to share this screen here. I've got a lot going on here. Sharing a whole bunch of different screens. But for those of you in the Zoom, I'm just going to go over real quick where we are in the whole process. So let's just go entire screen, grab that. And I will show you that we have been, oops, that's not it either. Oh, well, so much for that. I thought that was going to be the whole course thing. Well, anyway, let me stop sharing that and get back to the course here. Told you it was a long day. Let's see. Zoom. There we go. Okay. So I was just trying to get us oriented and where we have been and where we arrive. And, it's funny, like I said, every time I coach in a group coaching setting for the private coaching, or I do this Profitable Agent Plan, it's pretty uncanny how I always have an anecdote that I can share with you. And I have to say, I've been making Annabelle Pereira at Griffin here on Cape Cod my hero lately because, boy, she just executes the plan. And so tonight, we had a lot going on today, but I had a listing presentation with her because she's smart enough in the heat of the moment to ask for mentoring. See, I believe in TCM. Training is you train somebody on a system that you build. They go out and try it. They come back, tell you what happened. You coach them against it, make adjustments. But in the heat of the moment, there's that moment we have to pick up the phone and ask help. What do I do? What do I say? What about this? And she did that with a deal that she was negotiating. So she texted me and said, can you get right back to me? Because I'm trying to do something with a home sale contingency and a lot of money on the line. I mean, it's an 865 purchase, it's a downsize, and we just went to the house and it looks to be about a 1617. So it's a big deal for her. And again, so proud of her at 23 years old. I repeat these stories because I want to get it in your head that this isn't an experiential thing. When you have a system and you execute it to the letter, you don't cherry pick it, you can get a consistent result. And that's what's supposed to happen. So the reason I bring it up tonight in section 8 or week 8 of the Profitable Agent Plan is because the subject at hand is about prospects and protecting them. And so I'm going to get into the slides first, and then I'm going to tell you the story about how he validated why he chose to do business with her. And I'll get into that in a second, but I'm going to go right into the lecture part of it and hit it first, and then we'll come back to her story and we'll talk about it. Then I'll also go a little bit further and I'll talk about how I obsess over the growth of my list of prospects and really trying to protect a lot of them at once. And that's how I bring consistency to my own personal book of business. Okay. So let's get rolling here, and I will make sure we end up trying to share the right screen, he said. So let's see, Chrome tab, here it is. Voila. Okay. I'll go into the slideshow here. So the real question at hand is, are you guarding your prospect against the wolves? And you're going to see that the biggest wolf could be your own wolf of neglect, that you're neglecting these prospects that you're creating. And as I've said, as we've gone through the course, I like to give definitions that make sense. So I want to just say that obviously developing an answer to the question of, are you guarding your prospects, is probably also a requirement that I talk to you a little bit. I'll go backwards a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit more about what a prospect is, right? Oh, I actually have it in these slides. So I'll wait till I get there. Okay. So developing an answer to guard, the question, are you guarding your prospects, is obviously all these, are critical. But the first things first is like, where are we going to put these things, right? So the best definition of a CRM is a contact relationship manager. So, I go back to this because when you're talking about prospects, you have to see how you evolve a contact into a prospect. So you have to have this place where all of this lives. And I think that's a really important part of the conversation, is that you have these places that are databases per se, and we all think digital in this day and age. I use Keep, which used to be called Infusionsoft. Some of my clients use Follow Up Boss. I mean, there are many contact relationship management systems, but I want to make sure I define it correctly for you, because it's a contact, not a client, not a customer. It's a contact. And I'll tell you why I give it that definition. Because if you think of a database, there's all sorts of different types of contacts, and I'll get into that in a second. But a contact, in a digital form at least, is nothing more than a full name. And by the way, a fully formed contact is important to understand, because from a marketing standpoint, you want a fully formed contact, meaning you have their full name and all parties. If it's a couple or whatever it might be, family, you want all of the contact information, full names, mailing address, email address, and cell phones. That's a fully formed contact, because what that's going to allow you to do is communicate with that contact over a variety of mediums. Okay, let that linger in the air. When you have a fully formed contact, you're going to be able to deal with them in different mediums, meaning what? You can pick up the phone and call them. Yes, number one. You can text them. You can email them. And very importantly to me and my systematic approach, you can mail them. And you're going to see how that comes, to fruition tonight in Annabelle's story. So the primary advantage of using a CRM, by the way, behind me always, I have these wire rack systems. I don't know if you can see them because I have the slide showing, but it was always a wire rack system. And that's how it started for me way back in the 80s. Meaning when I went to college, I was looking for a systematic approach to do well and stay organized. So I went out, not only bought a desk with organized systems in it, but also a lot of these wire racks. And I remember when I started my real estate career that I had done so well in college, why not take that wire rack system of organizing things in these wire racks and these manila folders and just organizing them and labeling them? Well, that was really the early on way that I managed my contacts and my relationships with them. So early on in my career, it had nothing to do with digital because it wasn't even a thing. Like, I'm 58 years old. So let me tell you, when I was in college, my roommate was just a wealthy guy whose father said, you guys drive down to Cambridge and go get yourself one of these new computers. And like, it was one of the first IBMs, right? Tiny little shop in Cambridge, right near Harvard. I mean, they had probably 5 of these things in stock. So I never had any kind of bias early on in life in getting organized to be digital. I learned in a physical way, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me, that I was able to understand that a nice physical manifestation of organization was really helpful. Because I think as time went on, and I, as a coach and as a doer of things digital, I realized how easily you can make a mess of a digital database because you can't see it. You can't feel it. You can't touch the manila folders. It's just out there. Now, it's wonderful from the standpoint of you don't have this big paper chase, but it is not wonderful because it just disappears into the cloud per se, right? So you don't really see these contacts. So that becomes a challenge. But let's talk about the primary advantage of using any form of CRM, right? It's so that you can segment your list of leads, prospects, and clients. Okay. So when I talk about these leads, prospects, and clients, those are labels for the prospects. Let that sink in for a second, right? So the most important thing you talk about when you're trying to really understand, labels for the contacts. When you think about an entire database, you're going to have labels for these contacts so that you can segment or separate out your database. And most people never teach this or never think like this. And it's a really critical, simple, yet powerful strategy to really just think about this. And for me, it was a problem because these definitions weren't really clear. So I'll get into that a little bit more as the slides roll on here. But imagine that before you ever would do anything digitally, you went to Staples, and you walk into Staples and you say, I need a box of 3 different colored folders, red, blue, green, whatever it might be. And then I need these wire racks. You know, the wire racks, just they sort of, float downward so you can see what's up in the back. And then you can put the label of what's in there in the back or wherever it might be. If I were to do this today and there was no digital, it's exactly what I would do. I would go out and get 1, 2, 3. And that would be my conversion module. Physically, my conversion module, converting a contact's disposition from lead. I don't know why they want to buy or sell, and I don't know how motivated they are on a scale of 1 to 10. Therefore, I don't know their timing. Contact, I absolutely know that they have a real why they want to buy or sell, and they have a high motivation sometime in the next, hopefully 6 months or under, maximum 12 months, but they have a real reason why they want to sell or buy. And they definitely can see themselves having a high level of motivation of 9 to 10 to do so. And that's a prospect. And then the client is obviously on the listing side when we sign a client contract. And these days, with all the changes in buyers, it's going to be the same. You're going to have to really sign something with a buyer now. So that's going to signify when you actually take over a buyer-client relationship. So the simplest thing to imagine as these segmentations are happening is that the contact disposition is changing. So if I go out and I get or buy or acquire a fistful of contacts where I don't know why and I don't know how motivated, they're leads. So I could put Dan, Jen, Kevin, Peter, Sam, all these people I could put in a lead wire rack and have them there. And again, presumably I want to teach you the right way. These are listing leads. They could be expireds. They could be probates. They could be FSBOs. They could be referred professionally to, whatever. But they're leads because all I know about them is that they own a property in the geography within which I want to do business. And today, only at or above the median if I can help it. Okay. That's who would be in those wire racks. The next job is to try to move that stuff to the next level, which is prospect, right? So what is the most critical list segment to make your business predictable and sustainable? Well, it's critical to maintain a clean list of prospects. So let's talk about prospects, what that disposition really means to me. For years, when I got into the business, the training and coaching was just so haphazard. There was very little digital access to anything. We hadn't even digitized really in a full aggressive way the MLS when I got licensed. It was 1999. So we were just beginning to have the MLS online. In fact, in the early 90s, as an investor, a young investor looking to flip properties, there was a place right down the street here where I would go, and there would be a book that was printed every 2 weeks. So all of the, the listings were in a booklet. So there was nothing that was digital. So make a long story short, you had to really hustle your leads. You could run ads in the newspaper or wherever they might be. You could door knock. There were a lot of things that you could do. But if I could go back in time, no matter how barbaric and non-digital the world was, I would have said, where can I get a listing at or above the median price in the geography within which I really want to do business, and know that there's some context? And I've talked about this, in this course about leads that have context, meaning rather than just go into Osterville and start cold calling or door knocking everybody, looking for anybody who owns a property that might want to sell, I can time manage that by saying, well, I'd rather prospect, looking to turn a lead to a prospect. Remember, the gap there is context, that there is context to sell. There's a why, that's context to sell. There's a motivation, that's context to sell. So I start with these leads identified as that avatar ideal, but then I have to make an offer to that lead to see if they accept it. and if they truly are the avatar, and pull them through to this prospect club, if you will, right? I have to pull them through. Now, the difficulty is the majority of those people, okay, the majority of those people are not going to be a prospect, and that's a tough thing. So let's define a prospect a little bit more specifically. A prospect has a real reason to move and a high level of motivation to do so in the next 6 to 12 months maximum. Now, you might say, oh, but I was talking to people, and you're going to hear an anecdote today that it was over 12 months in this follow-up situation that happened with Annabelle. But what I'm telling you to do is try to build your business more so with people who are looking to do business sooner than later. And sooner is defined liberally to 12 months. I'm not saying that you couldn't do longer. In my world, where I've built my book of business so aggressively over the time, and I know how to build, maintain a clean list of prospects that are all inside 12 months, we just found that there's plenty of people. When you improve your methodologies to market to the right prospect, you find that there are plenty of people that want to do something inside the next 12 months. When you're first beginning, like Annabelle is younger and she's building her book of business, I say stretch that. Because when I first started going after listings in earnest and really with this new systematic approach, I built a system to follow up with them for 36 months. But then what I realized was that CRM, that customer relationship manager, the management thereof was getting away from me. And it was getting bloated because we would just like whimsically say, oh, you're going to do something in 3 years. We'll follow up with you. Will we? Do we have systems good enough to do that? And that's where we learned the lesson on defining this tighter and moving from, and of course, wouldn't everybody love to talk to a lead today who's a prospect immediately and who becomes a client quickly? Sure. But I call that skimming the cream. From time to time, it does happen, right? For example, I went out to meet somebody today that called on one of my listings direct. They sounded like they had a real urgency to move. It turns out they do. And it turns out they made an offer. So yeah, it was a wonderful cream skimming day. Now we have to go through some hoops to make sure that we can put a deal together, but those days do happen. But if I ever relied on that type of a prospect who goes right from lead to prospect to potential client all in a couple of hours, I'd go broke and it would be delusional. So I have to say to myself, well, how am I going to, build that clean list? And that's the act of prospecting per se, where you're out there trying to go constantly and consistently in the act of creating prospects. By the way, let me just say this about my own business. When I'm coaching one-on-one and I'm talking to all these top producers, what I say to them is I wake up and freak out if I don't think my telemarketing staff is consistently creating new prospects to pull into the prospect club where we can then really kick in our protective systems that I'm talking about with you, right? So that leads into this. How do you protect these prospects once you get them, right? So let's just say today was a wonderful, opportunity to meet with these people, but most people are going to do something later. And again, you're trying to define later inside of 12 months if you can help it, but they're going to do something later. So you get all excited that you want to have this good conversation. They definitely have a why and a motivation, but it's not right now. So instead of just forgetting about them or trying to go to the next person, you grab them and you say, okay, I'm going to communicate with them at a frequency that matches their timing and follow up with my market insight that speaks to their specific interest. Okay? Let that sink in. If I create a prospect, pull them into a club, I've defined them as avatar at that point, meaning, great, they own a property. And again, this can be the buy side too, but I'm going to stay on the sell side. They own a property at or above the median in the geography. They have a real why and a motivation to do so inside the next 12 months, but they're not right now. So I got to put them in a pen. And I just told you in the last couple of slides, I want to make my business predictable and sustainable. So I have to wake up every day and protect them. That is the most vulnerable point in my business, not my leads, not my clients, my prospects. They are vulnerable because the wolves are the people who will meet them after me, even though I might have prospected them. make a different kind of offer more service, get referred in from by a friend, and I've done nothing to build the relationship from the initial. Now, of course, in this course, if you've been in all episodes of the course, you saw me, and here's one right here. You saw me talk about my unique selling proposition, which always happens first when I create a prospect. I wouldn't care if it was a family member. Everybody's going to get a package of information physically, unless they're really, really adamant that they just do not want to kill a tree. It's physical. Why? Because when you get something of value in your hands, and I prospect you that way, I have birthed you into my prospect world where you see me as extremely different now. You don't see me as the same. So I'm in a competitionless lane to start. However, the minute that ends and you're not ready, there's this huge gap that gets created in time where you're getting something really helpful from me and you love it, but you're not going to do anything for a while. So there's this gap of time. Oh, I'll just follow up and I'll just put them on MLS and I'll just dump some stuff on them. That's the wolf of your own neglect, that kind of attitude where you want to play reactive to people instead of proactive. So what I'm telling you is if somebody tells us they're 6 months out, we're going to communicate at a frequency of 1 month, once a month, okay? Because their timing is such that I'm going to have 30 days worth of new data to give them, because they always get pictures and details of properties that sold around there straight from MLS, just like realtors. They always get a one-page statistical market update straight from, that'll show them the exact direction of current market pricing, right? They always get that. But that data changes for that person who's going to list in 6 months or buy in 6 months. It changes, and there's enough change in a month where I should package it up and send it to them and stay consistent with that, right? Now, of course, when I call them each month, I give them what I think about what I just sent. Hey, listen, I don't know if you saw this, but the good news is over in Cotuit Bay Shores, there's some really good recent sales over there, right? So the trend is still strong. And of course, you have multi-million-dollar over at the waterfront. So we started to talk to Annabelle's client, Sumner, about this tonight. So we were giving some market insight. And that speaks to their specific interest about selling that specific house, because we're sending pictures and details around them. And then globally, we're telling them how's the market, right? So it speaks to their needs. And when you speak to somebody's needs with that kind of information, you're empowering them. And when you empower them, they're being driven more magnetically to a relationship with you, and they begin to co-create it. And people will support what they co-create. So all that proactivity of information physically delivered, I'm not saying that we don't have a layer of digital, but people love physical stuff. Think Amazon showing up at your doorstep. So they get it and they consume it. And now they're appreciating you. You are just you're feeding your prospects so well that the cage and the net that's going around them to protect them. I'm not saying every once in a while somebody doesn't get pulled through the fence link by somebody else and disappear, but you're protecting so much of it that you're building this asset inside your business, which is the asset that makes you predictably and sustainably able to create clients, in spite of the fact that once in a blue moon, you get that extra one. So you don't want to rely on that extra one, that instantaneous one like I did today or at an open house. They do exist, but you can't exist without this sustainable group of prospects that you're creating and feeding, right? I mean, eventually there's a harvest time for that prospect, and not everybody makes it. Yes, you will throw prospects out, but hopefully if you're always creating new ones every week that you work in this business, you hear me? Every week that you work in this business, if you haven't intentionally tried to turn a lead into a prospect, you have punched a hole in the sustainability and predictability of your business. Let that sink in. You must be intentionally creating prospects every week that you work. I say every week that you work because I want you to take vacations. I want you to go away from the business, but you have to create these prospects, and then you have to communicate with them, delivering information, market insight, all of that, right? Because You never want to rely on the delivery only of digital, right? Not just digital. And that's what everybody's doing. So the herd is all doing the same thing. First, they're trying to take the business instead of giving information to empower that person. And secondly, they're just dumping digital information on people and letting them sort it out, hoping that somehow miraculously, when they're ready, they pick up the phone and say, "Oh, come sell me a house." Sometimes that happens, but it's insane that we would think that's good business. It's pathetic. It's low standard. And it's what more and more people are doing in the digital age, especially younger agents who are not being taught to be proactive with physical information, proactive with market insight calls, proactive with just that relationship that is really going to be respected, appreciated, so that this co-created prospect relationship is tight. It's tight. How many times do you hear people say, "Oh, buyers are liars," or "Oh, that person cheated on me"? No, that wasn't their fault. That was our fault for not understanding how to create that prospect correctly. And by the way, some of you are in a hurry to create a lousy prospect that's not really a prospect. There's not really a why. There's not really a motivation to do so. Or you're trying to steal them from somebody else. Or you're committed to that realtor. Yes, goodbye. You don't try to steal somebody's business. It's just not a good look, and you don't need to. There's plenty of other stuff, okay? So the pro tip, if you want to really know about magnetic marketing and how to attract prospects, you could read Dan Kennedy's Magnetic Marketing book. A lot of what I learned, at least in its most basic form, was that, where this whole idea of giving information product, that's what this is I'm holding up here. When you give an information product for free, it magnetically attracts somebody in to want your insight. Then once you start to give your insight, they listen. That's phase one. Phase number next is over that course of time until that prospect wants to become a client. And then it's just so easy. Okay. So let me stop the screen share because I want to get into this with you and talk a little bit about this with what happened with Annabelle. So Annabelle is probably one of the best students of this system. And she is an agent here at Griffin Realty Group. And the reason she's not on tonight is because she's actually in the middle of this deal. So what's happening with Annabelle is Annabelle will come in here, and she's our fulfillment agent, meaning when we have these packages, she creates them. So she knows how to do this cold. So when she goes to her own book of business, she knows how to do it cold. She knows how to pick up the phone and prospect somebody over the phone, which she did with this guy. This guy was an expired a long time ago. She has just stayed with him. Now, again, 24 months in that case. She's done 2 deals, this year. One's already closed. This one is something that's just coming together. But that one she closed 2-3 weeks ago is a $1.7 million follow-up prospect for 2 years. She got it off my open house, one of my houses, meaning my listing. And this one was a cold call and expired, which she follows the system, right? And followed up. So she created these 2 luxury, and again, 23 years old, no resume required. And she created this. So let me tell you what happened. I got on a phone call with the 2 of them this morning because they wanted my insight as to how to negotiate this purchase, because he's thinking about taking money out of he lost his wife, poor guy, it's very sad. And so he's taking his money out of his IRA to potentially buy this, but he wants to sell his house instead. So I was just giving him advice to say, look, at what I would do, let's go in with a home sale contingency first. And at the back end of it, say, but if I don't close, I'll take the money from my IRA. By then we'll know what your house is really worth. And we'll blow it out the door. And by the way, I'll come see your house. And I saw it. It's spectacular, really good house. So good situation, all of this, right? But he said to me this morning on the phone, and I'm going to tell you, he said it again tonight. So he says this to me twice now. This morning he says, do you know why? And he said, Annabelle, don't be insulted. He said, I know you're a little bit of a rookie, but I want to ask Danny, do you know why I did business with her? So I joked. I said, yeah, because she's the nicest person you've ever met, which she is. Annabelle is the sweetest person. She's humble. She's super quiet. You would never say there's a superstar salesperson, which just goes to show you also, this isn't a salesy thing, right? This is a service thing. So he said, no, it's because she cold called me, number one, which I appreciated. Turns out he's a salesman in the clothing business for 40 years. He loved that. She cold called me and she offered me information. But the key is she never stopped sending me information. That just happened this morning, and here we are doing a call on it tonight. So when I tell you this is the actual system, I'm telling you how it turns into money. You can do the math at 2.5%. If she sells this property when 1.6, let's say 1.5 to 1.7, and she sells him the buy side at 8 and change, take it all and do 2.5%. And if she picks up more business off of the open house, you get the point. So this simple concept of creating the prospect by going to, what do we do this in, week 2 or whatever, we talk about this unique selling proposition package of information and how to make one. She gives this to him and then follows up. And he said again tonight, he goes, he's older, so he probably forgot he said it. Do you want to know why I chose her? And he just starts pointing to the table. And he's saying, see the information? She just kept sending me the information, giving me the updates, keeping me posted. And he's a business guy. So when you start to go to the right of the medium, this is a business guy who just appreciated this business approach, which nobody was doing. So it wasn't even like he started to consider somebody else. When he went out to look at these properties, he drove by this property, called her, she took him there, showed him, and wrote up the offer. That's the loyalty that the prospect has. So even when the prospect is out of the pen, he was so loyal to her because of the what she had done with that prospect follow-up. He can laugh at the wolves. Somebody could try to pick his pocket, and he could say, no, I'm with somebody already. And that's exactly how this works, okay? All right, voila, one breath. That's it. Let's go to Q&A. I see somebody's in the chat. Is contact client in there? Okay, good question, Steve. Let's go through this again. A contact is all of those things at one point or another. So you never stop being a contact as you're rolling through an assembly line-like process, okay? So a contact is nothing more than all the information, the person's name, their cell phone number, their email address, and their mailing address. That's a contact. So that never changes. That's your raw material that is moving all the way through from the beginning of your assembly line to the end of it. What's changing is the label of that contact, okay? So the label starts as lead. I don't know if that contact has a real why and a motivation to do something and will even consider me. A prospect, they definitely have a real why inside the next 12 months. They definitely can see themselves being a 9 to 10. And they accepted my unique selling proposition information. They're allowing me to talk to them. A client, they have signed an agreement with me, seller or buyer, right? Then a closing is the next one where they have moved into a contract. So the label on that contact, they're a closing contact. And then, of course, past client, which is an extremely important label because that's the asset we're creating. We call them happy griffins here, right? Where the idea is to try to create a happy griffin who's likely to repeat or refer. And that person continues to get information forever. They're going to get a quarterly mailed update that shows them, exactly how the market's doing. And we digitally send it every month to them too. And of course, then we put the warm and fuzzies in there with the brownies and the caramels on their happy property anniversary. But that's how it works. It's always a contact. The label goes from lead to prospect to client to closing to past client. So you have 5 labels, right? That's it. Nice and simple. But always a contact. Good question. All right, what else? Andre, Trang, Alex, Marlo, anything, Alexia, anything I can answer for you, GVD, Shauna, Roberto. I got my ringers in here too. Anybody have a comment on this tonight? But I gave you an anecdote of somebody other than Danny, right? Like that's her. Should be here tonight telling you too, but she's actually doing the deal, like I said. Shoot, Steve. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I mean, for me, it's an easy segue because we've always talked about that buyer package of information too. So you have a seller and a buyer package, right? So our buyer package, it looks identical to the seller package of information. So If I meet you as a buyer at an open house, I'm not going to worry about having you to sign something, Steve. I'm going to still behave the way I always have and give you information. So if you come to my open house, I don't need to have you sign anything at all. I'm just going to say, Steve, looks like you're not working with a realtor. I'd like to give you some information to make the process a little bit easier. This has pictures and details. This has pictures and details of properties that's sold in this price range, right? It has, also some for sales. I know you're looking at your phone, but I put some for sales together so you can see straight from LS what is for sale in this price range. I also have a one-page market update for you, Steve. And as a bonus, I gave you a copy of my 6-step plan that I customized for my buyers. Here you go, take that. So the minute that I act already as if I'm representing you, I'm changing the way that you see me already. I haven't asked you for anything, AKA a client contract or a signature. So the problem with all of this discussion that's been happening is everybody's so panicked about, well, when do you have them sign it? And how do you have them sign it? And what do I do? Well, stop talking about that. Talk about giving them value first, because then it becomes a very softer, much softer conversation that says, listen, as part of this, what I'd love to do is, if you're open to it, I'd love to take you out and see some of your favorites, right? Right? Then they say, great, I'd love that. By the way, the state now asks us to sign, a form that says we're representing you, and it dictates the commission. Don't worry about that, because when I make an offer on your behalf, I will include your commission in the gross that you pay. You stay focused on the gross that you pay. I'll stay focused on helping you get the best price, and my commission will be included. So nothing's changed. What changed was NAR screwed up because they were forcing us to offer compensation to each other to a certain extent. It was required, okay? That was a fatal flaw in the system, and that's what got exploited. But the marketplace of how this works, if I'm a listing agent and Steve as a buyer, you think I want to reject him? Yes, Steve, you're going to get some knucklehead agents that told somebody, oh, you don't have to pay anybody. All you have to do is pay me. Well, they're trying to double end it, which only happens 10, 11% of the time, right? And now what are they going to do when the market goes soft? They're not going to deal with the buyer agent. So there might be some fallout like that. But as far as the buyer's concerned, you have to learn how to present the valuable package of information to them. I mean, look at, when I have a new one-on-one coaching client, Steve, you do not pass go with me anymore until you can make a buyer and a seller package. You don't pass go. You just, I'm not going to, some of my top producers doing $2-3 million a year. I might jump into something else, but I'll get their head admin and say, here's how you make these 2 packages of information. You make them. And if you have agents, you get this buyer agency one going ASAP, right? Because this valuable information leads to a much easier ask for an agreement, right? And then, of course, Steve, you can give them a cancellation guarantee on the buyer agreement if they push back, right? You can just show them, say, listen, this is how we get paid, and again, I'll get out of the way if I'm a problem. So I just made it much smaller on the back of presenting value first. So for me, it's easy in my head, right? Because I'm not worried about taking anything from a seller expired, from a buyer off the street. I'm not taking first. I'm giving, hoping to magnetize you to me to see I know my stuff. I'm organized with information. My insight is good around that. That's where they see value, right? So I've had a couple questions about it, but very, very few, very few. Well, how do you see it? Have you seen any bumps and bruises? Yeah. 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 Well, the angst is coming from realtors. It's not really coming from the public. There was a little thing there is, oh, I guess I don't have to pay this anymore. No, that's ridiculous. Of course you have to pay it if you're going to sell your property. Do you want me to eliminate 89% of the people who would come here with their buyers? That's ridiculous. Why would you do that? Just stay focused on your net. Buyers, stay focused on the price you pay. Just stay focused. My fee's in there. Sellers, you stay focused on the net. Who cares what we pay in commissions if we net you a sufficient amount to be able to move on? That's how you really talk to people about the business of it. Stay focused on those two things with people, and the rest will follow. But of course, with our methodology, which you've been hanging around for a while, always the presentation of value in the form of a product, right? You got to organize this stuff. You have to do that. Otherwise, you're winging it, Steve. To send that stuff, when you see it in one of these forms, they're getting it handed to them, or I'm in a presentation. So if you're in an open house with me, you're getting the black folder that's presented. If you're getting a mailer, we just use these plain old envelopes because we want it to feel personal, right? Now, Grant, who's in here tonight, he FedExes his. So he makes those, he's one of my, not only is he a coaching member now, but we're also partners in Arizona. This is, he's very good at FedExing these. That makes a very big impression, especially if you're sending it to somebody. If somebody's really hot, you want to FedEx it to them, right? Because then there's the big impact and the big impression. You're welcome. Thanks for being here as usual. Other questions tonight? Yes, Andre, go ahead, bud. Yeah, low. To get the license, it's very low. Yeah, that's very low. However, to be good at it, very high, because the training and coaching that's out there is usually tactical about a piece of it, right? You don't really see this kind of conversation where I'm telling you it's an assembly line and you're manufacturing a happy past client. You're not going to find that anywhere, right? It's just something that evolved and the way that I learned and who I am when I teach it like that. So when I teach that to someone like Annabelle, and I teach it to somebody who pays me 101 and she does better than them, what's the difference, right? Is the lack of adherence to a system, the lack of discipline. So I think that barrier to success is extremely high because we're always dealing with, well, we want to cherry pick it, or the animal brain shuts you down. So getting the license, low. Being successful for that reason, high. The competition high. No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't. I think it's a noisy industry. For some of the, like, here's where the competition is high. One of my clients, Duran he says, 50% of the business we're not going to get because Andre is friends with that guy since they were kids. So that guy's going to do business with him first, right? So you can throw away a big chunk of it. It's extremely competitive there. You're not going to take away somebody's friend. That's why I say, when you hear that, move on, right? It's the other part of the business that, especially where there's mistakes like expireds or canceled or withdrawns, I don't think that the barrier or the competition is very high in my experience, right? Because when I go into an expired that doesn't make a quick, impetuous decision to relist again, I just don't see a cattle call of people. Yes, calling them in the beginning, sure. But the way that we were able to get through that thickness of that competition was to have this offer that was so different, just to give away information versus trying to take a listing, that we were able to pull ourselves out of that massive, bunch of people who make those cold calls, right? So it's a tricky question to answer exactly, because it's not a yes or a no, it's not a one or the other. It's that when I see the cattle call of noise, which we might call competition, it's one you're just not going to compete against because everybody's, got a realtor friend, right? But the other one starts to thin out as it becomes more difficult to sell a house, especially. That's very tricky. So I don't see a lot of good competition at that level. If I go to do an expired, I'm usually maybe up against 2 or 3 really good people, but oftentimes none. On the heels of tonight, on the back of tonight's conversation, the prospects that we're talking to, Andre, aren't usually talking to anybody else, right? We've made that relationship, and we're in a solo relationship, we have to screw it up, right? We have to stop sending information to screw it up. So in that scenario, extremely low competition, which makes it very exciting that if you go out and scrap for prospect and you really protect it, there's very little competition fighting for your prospect at that point in time. Yeah, relationships. It's a good question. That's what I was saying. Most agents, most get a license and they don't know any better and they know very little about business and they're at brokerages where nobody really knows, right? It's sort of the rah rah, let me put my hand around your back at the water cooler type of thing. Maybe I know how to send some postcards or we'll go run an open house. I don't want to be derogatory towards people that are managing, but what I would say is the majority of people do their 2 to 3 deals a year, right? That's really truly the national average. They hide it now, but for years it was about 2 point something deals a year. Why? Because in your sphere of influence, meaning walking around the people that you know, there's probably, and you're a little bit younger, so you might not have as many yet that can afford it. Who knows, right? But let's just say the average realtor is going to do it with their friends 2 to 3 times a year. So that's your answer. The majority of people are simply because there's a good friend. So that leaves all this other business where if you know how to be proactively prospecting people, making an offer, following up, those are all business techniques, and most agents don't know them and will never learn them. So they'll do their 2 to 3, deals, maybe keep it a part-time, or maybe get frustrated that that's never going to be enough to make a living and quit. That's why there's so much turnover, right? Correct. But even to recognize it as a business, that's even more obvious, right? You're right. Streamlining is what we do here, right? We talk about efficiencies and details. But like Steve just asked a good basic question. Like, how do you segment it? No, no, no. Get up above the whole assembly line with me first. We're all going to stand in a glass room and we're going to go on a field trip. And we're going to look down at the assembly line just like a Tesla. And we're going to watch the steel and aluminum and everything come in like leads. And we're going to watch that go along the assembly line with all these machine tools becoming something different until it's the final product and it goes off to be shipped. It's the same thing for us. So if you can see it holistically as a business, then you can work on it pieces at a time. But if you get down in micro focus, you can't see the active prospecting. And if you can't see that, you can't see why do you need to choose a seller avatar? Why should it be median above? Those are all business concepts, Andre, that nobody really talks about, right? But they're basic. It's like fifth grade level understanding of business. It's not complicated. But if we don't get up above it and see it and have that discussion, we're always talking about a tactic. I was on Peter Retteni pretty hard last week because in the middle of talking to me, he's like, well, I was on YouTube and I saw this guy say this. And I'm like, stop. Like, don't do that anymore in here because you're distracting people. And that's what people do. Instead of learning the business, they hear, oh, somebody's got a tactic on YouTube. Somebody's got a tactic on the internet. Those are tactics. They might fit into an assembly line like process or they might not. But what I've discovered, it's a very simple business. If there are no listings, there is nothing inside the digital MLS to even worry about compensation, right? So it's a marketplace. So that begs the question, who controls the listings? And I want that to be you. So I'm telling you, don't go fight for Jimmy's friend, Jimmy the realtor's friend. Go look to places like expireds, cancel withdrawals, probates, and open houses, right? Where you're meeting potential people who want to buy but have something to sell. So you try to just go hunting in the obvious places, and it works. How do I know? Because it's what I do. I'm still an active broker. So I'm going to go to as many listing presentations as I can. Now I have a telemarketing staff. So you would have to do that yourself or door knock, right? So it's telemarketing, most leverage, door knock, great face-to-face. But I would only be going to houses where there's context. calling the expireds, probates, cancels, withdrawals, FISBOs, all of those things have context, right? So I would start there. Otherwise, you're not being realistic about how the business works. That help? And you know what's crazy? It's interesting you say that. You would think like this is the obvious stuff that every realtor does some kind of talking about. If I want to list your house, I'm going to talk about what's sold around it. I'm going to have pictures and details. I need to answer how's the market, right? And then I better have a plan. But nobody ever takes the time to organize those three basic things. We talk about them haphazardly. How's the market? Oh, it's a buyer's market. That's bullshit. That doesn't even mean anything, right? But that's what we do. Instead of saying, oh, let me show you this one-page statistical market update that will answer that pretty specifically, right? And then the pictures and details that sold around you, everybody knows how to do that, but they get too much into calling them comparables versus, look, this is what the money bought around you, right? This is what it bought. There's no two houses alike, but this is what the money bought. And that's why that higher level skill that we teach is that analysis to take that sold divided by the assessed values, get a range. It's uncanny how helpful that is, right? So we take not only this, which is, Andre, I have given this to people and said, here's what I do. Like competitors that were friends. I said, here's what I do. And it's lost on them. So there's your barrier to entry right here in my hands. And it might just be a little bit of thinking to think about how you organize what we already talk about and then actually take the time to make it. We're drowning in laziness, right? Drowning in it. So I know that sounds ridiculous that it could be that simple to be that unique. It turns out it works because I've been doing it for years and I've never had anybody say, oh, I had 6 guys come in and do exactly what you did. So there you go, right? Welcome, Andre, as always. Oh, yeah. No, go ahead, brother. Hang on. That's good. Let me get here. I came on the desktop. Andre, do you have my cell phone? Okay, I'm going to drop it in. I'll send it to you privately here. Text me because I got to get off and I want the reminder in case I forget, okay? You're welcome. Okay, there you go. Just send me a text recording when you get a chance because I actually logged into the platform. So yeah, let me do this. Let me switch because Alexia wants one too. Hang on, Alexia. Let me just. No, all good. Yeah, all good. Hold on. I have to watch out. There might be a little reverb. Hang on.
Recording in progress.
Okay. I'm still here, right? Yeah. I'm still here with you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Hang on. I just had to log out and log in with the app. Let's see. I think these links still work, even if it's still recording at the moment. So let's see. Come on. Anybody else have a question before I wrap?
No, it's all good, Danny, though.
Cool.
It's really good.
Which part mostly? What resonates?
Well,
Usually
you know,
when I hear you
guess
say
what
that.
really hit me is like when you were saying, like, you check on your telemarketers every single week. And as you know, we're struggling with that. We just tried and bombed with another one. So we've been picking it up, both Grant and I. And we're not getting the prospects that a really good telemarketer would get. Like,
Yeah.
I just blew through all the new leads this week and
Yeah.
did not get one decent phone call with anybody. It's upsetting. Like it really.
Yeah, and you just have to hang in there. That's for you because it's a higher level discussion with the one-on-one coaching with you and
Yeah.
Grant. You have to persevere. Donnie was ready to quit too and just delegate out. I said, don't do that. get Lauren to help you. And he did. And I think we just got a winner. So they're out there and it's perseverance. But, you know, when Andre was talking about barriers to entry, that's one of them. If you really want to be, you know, an accelerant, if he really wanted to see how, I mean, I just can't believe how often I'm going into houses for expireds where I don't have competition because people don't have good telemarketers and they don't have a good offer that the telemarketer makes. And so that turns out to be a massive barrier to entry. So, and you can see why, Shauna, because it's finding one and hiring one and then training one is brutal, right? But you just persevere. You just say, I don't care how long it takes, when it's going to happen, I'm going to make it happen. And you just persevere, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's a bear. It is. It's the biggest grizzly bear, but that's what he's talking about, the barrier to entry. So as a managed team with, you know, a pro telemarketer on there, that's just such a hoop of fire to get through because it's just a hard person to find. But
Yeah.
you persevere and eventually you get them, right?
Absolutely.
So
We'll get it.
good. All right, I put the link, everybody. You got to click that link before I hang up here. So if you want the recording, it should be at the end of that once it's done rendering. And other than that, I appreciate all of you who come live here, and I will see you next week, okay? Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye-bye.